They say you remember the last thing someone says before everything falls apart. For me, it was, I can't stand the sight of you anymore. Rachel's voice cracked through the living room like a whip, the kind that doesn't just sting your skin, it slices deep, straight into bone. Her eyes were wild, lips trembling not from fear, but fury. I didn't say a word at first. My mouth had gone dry. I was staring at her like I didn't know the woman in front of me. In many ways, I didn't. Not anymore. And then there was Natalie. She was perched on the corner of our beige leather couch, knees tight together, fingers laced awkwardly in her lap. Her long auburn hair fell in a smooth wave over her shoulder, hiding part of her face like a curtain drawn during a performance that had gone horribly off-script. The moment Rachel stormed off down the hall, her heels striking the floor like gunshots, Natalie exhaled for the first time in minutes. She didn't follow her friend. She didn't even look toward the bedroom door Rachel slammed behind her. Instead, she looked at me. Her eyes, green and unblinking, held something I didn't expect. Not pity, not discomfort, but resolve. She leaned forward slowly, lips parting as if she were afraid Rachel might still hear her. Then, barely above a whisper, she said the words that would end up changing everything. Wait for me outside. My heart skipped. What? Just wait for me. Outside. I blinked, confused, still processing what the hell had just happened. Rachel and I had fought before. Loudly, passionately. But this was different. Her words weren't a spark in the middle of a storm. They were cold. Final. I grabbed my keys off the console and stepped out into the chilled dusk air without another word. The wind bit through my t-shirt as I leaned against the hood of my car. I stared up at the soft swirl of clouds drifting past the moon. My hand shook, not from the cold, but from something else. Something unspoken between us, Rachel and I. The thing we'd both been pretending wasn't there. A fracture. One we could no longer tape over with sex, or laughter, or shared wine on the back deck. That stuff had dried up months ago. Maybe longer. Maybe I just stopped noticing. Or maybe I was in denial. I heard the front door creak. Then click. Soft heels tapped on the stone porch, and Natalie stepped into view, wrapping her cardigan tightly around herself. Let's go to your car, she said. It's better if Rachel doesn't hear us. I opened the passenger door, and she slid in, brushing her skirt underneath her thighs. I joined her inside. The cabin filled with the faint scent of her perfume, something floral and just a little musky. Familiar, but forbidden. The silence stretched as we sat there. I looked over at her, waiting. She didn't start with comfort. She didn't say, "Are you okay?" Or, "I'm sorry you had to hear that." Instead, she stared at the dash and asked, flatly, "Have you ever wondered why she changed?" I blinked. "What?" "Rachel," she said. "Why she's different, colder, distant. Have you really never questioned it?" I swallowed hard, something bitter and dry catching in my throat. She's been stressed. Work. Life. I figured it was. No, she cut me off. It's not just stress. It's not random. My stomach turned. What are you trying to say? She glanced at me then, eyes narrowing. I'm saying there are things she hasn't told you. Things I didn't want to be a part of. But I am now. Natalie, I started, but she shook her head. No, she said. I let it go on too long. I thought I was helping her, being a supportive friend. But the longer I kept her secrets, the more I realized I wasn't just helping her, I was helping her hurt you. I sat back, pulse pounding. Jesus. I'm not telling you this to be cruel, she said, voice soft now. But I think you deserve to know what she's really been doing. Who she's really been spending her nights with when she says she's staying late at the office. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. My jaw clenched. I could hear Rachel's voice in my head, those half-assed excuses. Late meetings. Client dinners. The way she started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. How she turned away in bed, always saying she was tired or that she had a headache. She said I wasn't passionate anymore, I muttered. Natalie turned to me again. She said that because she didn't want to admit she was looking for it somewhere else. I looked over at her, the tension between us tightening, coiling like a rubber band stretched to its limit. Natalie's voice lowered. I shouldn't say more. Not tonight. Why not? She hesitated. Her lips parted slightly, her breath shallow. Because once I tell you, there's no going back. The air between us thickened, heavy and strange. Our knees brushed slightly. It was the first physical contact I'd had with a woman in months that didn't feel like an obligation. It felt electric, and wrong, and necessary. Then tell me, I said, my voice almost a growl. I want to know everything. Natalie looked me dead in the eye. Okay, she whispered. But not here. She reached over and touched my hand, just briefly. A whisper of a gesture, but enough to make every nerve in my arm tingle with something hot and dangerous. Meet me tomorrow, she said. Somewhere quiet. Alone. I nodded, unable to speak. My mind already spiraling. Rachel had just screamed that she couldn't stand me anymore. But the woman she trusted most in the world? She had just walked outside and into my car, and she wasn't looking at me like I was a failure. She was looking at me like she saw something Rachel had forgotten was even there. And that scared the hell out of me. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even lie down. I just sat in the dark at the edge of our bed, still dressed, staring at the spot where Rachel used to sleep curled into me like I was her favorite place in the world. Now, that side was untouched, too perfect. The sheet still smooth, the pillow undented. Like she wasn't just emotionally gone, she'd physically vacated the space long ago, and I'd somehow never noticed. Her words from earlier echoed in my head. I can't stand the sight of you anymore. And then Natalie's. Have you ever wondered why she changed? Yeah, I'd wondered. I just never asked the question out loud because I was terrified of the answer. By morning, I was a wreck, bloodshot eyes, hollowed-out chest, nerves strung tight like wire. I didn't know what Natalie was going to tell me, but the weight of anticipation pressed on me like a migraine. I kept thinking about that touch, her fingers brushing mine in the car. The quiet intensity in her eyes when she asked me to meet her alone. There was something else behind it, too. Something I couldn't name. Guilt? Worry? Or was it something worse, like desire? I texted her at 9 a.m. Me. Where do you want to meet? Natalie, Park off Hammond. Near the trailhead. Noon. Don't be late. Hammond Trail. It was just secluded enough, just quiet enough, away from neighborhoods and cell phone cameras. She was smart. Always had been. Rachel used to say Natalie could keep secrets better than anyone she knew. I guess I was about to find out just how true that was. By the time I pulled into the lot, Natalie was already there, leaning against her car with her arms crossed over her chest. She wore a slate-gray jacket, tight black jeans, and boots that made her legs look even longer. She looked good. Not in an I just rolled out of bed kind of way, but carefully put together. Her eyes followed me as I parked. Hey, I said, approaching her. Hey, she replied, brushing her hair back. Thanks for coming. I think I'd have gone insane if I didn't, I muttered, then nodded toward the trail. You want to walk? She shook her head. No. Let's sit. This won't take long, but it will hit hard. I swallowed and followed her back to her car. We sat inside, and for a moment, it was quiet. Too quiet. I could hear the ticking of her dashboard clock. Then she asked, when did Rachel stop sleeping with you? I blinked. That's blunt. I don't have time to sugarcoat this. I looked out the window. Months ago. Maybe even a year if I'm being honest. At first it was subtle. Long days at work. Fatigue. Then just nothing. And she always had an excuse. Said it wasn't about me. It wasn't about you, Natalie said softly. But not in the way you think. I turned back to her slowly. Then what was it? She hesitated for only a second, then said, because she was already sleeping with someone else. The air sucked from my lungs like a vacuum. I actually laughed, not out of humor, but shock. You're serious? Natalie nodded. Do you remember last spring? The work trip she took to Portland? Yeah, I said. 3 days. She came back distant. And sore, actually. Said it was from hiking. She didn't hike, Natalie said bitterly. She fucked a man named Caleb for 3 straight days in a hotel suite. My stomach dropped. Caleb. Her co-worker, Natalie said, her tone laced with venom. Tall. The smug one she always defended at parties? You know the one. My fist clenched in my lap. Jesus. I asked her point blank if anything ever happened between them. She swore on her mother's grave. She lied, Natalie said, her voice flat. And not just that once. My throat felt dry. How do you know all this? She bit her lip. Because I was there, Mark. Not in the room, obviously. But I covered for her. I told her boss she was sick one day. I answered your call when she didn't want to deal with you. I told you she was sleeping when she was in the shower, washing off another man. My head fell back against the headrest. I didn't want to get involved, she said quietly. But she made me. I was her excuse. Her alibi. Every time she told you she was with me, sometimes she was. But sometimes, she wasn't. You let this go on? I asked, voice cracking. She flinched like I'd slapped her. No, I didn't let anything. I just didn't stop it. And that's on me. I turned to her. Why now, Natalie? Why tell me all this now? Her gaze didn't waver. Because I'm tired of pretending she's someone she's not. And because I can't watch her keep destroying you while she plays the victim. You deserve better. There it was again. That look. The one that said she'd felt something for me for a long time and had buried it under layers of guilt and loyalty to her friend. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't willing to bury it anymore. I leaned forward, pressing my hands to my eyes. God, I feel like an idiot. You're not, she said. You trusted her. That's not stupidity. That's love. I looked at her again, really looked at her. Why did you help her? She looked away. Because I was afraid. Afraid she'd cut me off. Afraid of losing the little circle I had left. But mostly, she turned back to me. Because I was afraid that if I told you the truth, I'd want something I couldn't have. My breath caught. Rachel always said you were the safe one. The stable one. The one who'd never cheat, never lie, never leave. She said it like it was a bad thing. Natalie's lips curved into a sad smile. But I always thought it was the sexiest thing about you. There it was. Unspoken desire, finally spoken aloud. The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was thick. Electric. I'm not trying to cross a line, she said, more to herself than me. But maybe you already did, I whispered. She nodded once. Maybe I did. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch again. But the tension lingered, taut and undeniable, like the pause between a lightning flash and the inevitable crack of thunder. I'm not done, Natalie said. There's more. And I'll show you. Tomorrow. If you still want to see it. I didn't hesitate. I do. I met Natalie the next day at a coffee shop off Lincoln, a quiet place where people whispered their conversations and the baristas looked like they'd sooner confess murder than talk about someone else's business. She was already seated when I walked in, her laptop open and a folded manila envelope resting beside her coffee cup. She didn't smile when she saw me. Thanks for coming, she said, pushing the envelope toward me. I sat across from her, eyeing it. What is it? Proof, she said. Screenshots. Messages. Stuff Rachel doesn't know I have. I hesitated, my fingers brushing over the flap. Something about opening it felt final, like a man stepping into a room where the walls would close behind him forever. I wasn't sure if I was ready to see it, but I knew I couldn't turn away either. I opened the envelope. Inside were printed screenshots, dozens of them. Each one dated, time-stamped. I skimmed the first few. One message from Rachel, 11:37 p.m. I can still feel you on my skin. Still wet. Still shaking. Why do you make me lose control like this? Another, from someone labeled only as work trip. Because you want to be used. You like being mine when no one else is watching. Admit it. Another. Can you sneak away again this weekend? I'll tell Natalie to cover. My hand trembled as I turned the pages. The tone shifted as the messages went on, from romantic to explicit, from playful to degrading. And Rachel welcomed it all. She sent him pictures. She made jokes about me, mocking how predictable I was, how he thinks I'm curled up with a heating pad and chamomile tea while I've got Caleb's C***K inside me. I stopped breathing somewhere around page 12. Jesus Christ, I muttered. She laughed at me. She laughed. Natalie nodded slowly. I didn't know about those at first. She started sharing them after the second trip. At first, I thought she was just venting, being messy. But then, she made you her accomplice, I said bitterly. Yes, Natalie said. And I let her. I let her drag me down with her because she knew I wouldn't say no. I looked up from the papers. Why wouldn't you? She met my gaze, calm but unflinching. Because I cared about her. And because I cared about you. My stomach twisted. So you protected her. Even when she didn't deserve it. Natalie nodded. And now I'm done. She reached for her laptop, turned it toward me. The screen was filled with a string of saved chats from Rachel's private social media account, one she never used around me. I saw more messages, filtered by name. Caleb. Wait, I said. You said her phone. It had a contact saved as work trip. This doesn't say Caleb. It was him, Natalie confirmed. I saw them together. I even saw her text him in front of me. She thought I wasn't paying attention, but I was. I leaned back, mind reeling. You said you saw them together? Natalie's expression darkened. 2 months ago, she invited me to meet her for lunch, at that Thai place she always says she hates. When I walked in, she wasn't alone. She was with him. They didn't notice me at first. She was sitting in his lap, kissing him, feeding him bites of her curry like some cliché movie mistress. I clenched my jaw. She saw me after a few minutes and panicked. Told me to sit with them. Tried to play it off like a business lunch that got silly. I played along. But the moment I got her alone, I told her she was out of control. That she needed to tell you. What did she say? I asked. She said if I told you, she'd never speak to me again, Natalie said, her voice bitter. Said she'd tell you I made it up because I was jealous. Jealous, I repeated. Of her. Natalie hesitated, her green eyes sharp. Not of her. Of you. It hit me like a delayed punch. You liked me. I still do, she said softly. And that's part of why I couldn't take it anymore. She didn't just cheat. She used me to do it. She put me in the middle and dared me to betray her. You should have betrayed her sooner, I said, my voice quiet but full of heat. You should have told me the second you knew. Natalie nodded slowly. I know. She stood then, pacing beside the table. I couldn't stop watching her, her hips swaying in those tight black pants, her arms crossed under her chest. There was tension in her body that had nothing to do with guilt. It was coiled desire. Frustration. You know, she said, turning toward me, I used to envy her. I tilted my head. Rachel? She nodded. For having you. You'd show up to our girls' nights just to say hi and bring us wine. You'd send her texts like, miss you already, even if she'd only been gone an hour. And she'd roll her eyes and call you clingy. She used to love that, I said. At least, she said she did. Natalie stepped closer to the table, her eyes searching mine. She never deserved you. But I stayed quiet because I didn't think I did either. Silence stretched between us like a rubber band, ready to snap. I could feel the heat in my chest rising, not from anger anymore, but from her. From the way she looked at me with hunger she didn't try to hide anymore. I stood slowly. Natalie. I'm not making a move, she said, biting her lower lip. I'm just telling you that if I had you, I'd never need anyone else. That's all. She left the envelope with me and walked out without another word. And I just stood there, heart thundering, wondering how the hell I ever thought Rachel was the one holding this marriage together. Because the truth was simple now. She hadn't just broken it. She'd burned it to ash. I didn't know what I expected to feel the next time I looked at Rachel. Hate? Rage? Some deep, boiling need to scream until my throat went raw? But the truth was worse. I felt nothing. Not because I didn't care, because the caring had become hollow. Like shouting into an empty room and hoping someone will answer. All I could see now were her lies printed in black and white. Her moans typed out in messages. Her body sent to someone else without so much as a warning, a conversation, a fucking ounce of respect. I hadn't texted Natalie since the coffee shop. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed space to let it all sink in. To process. But that night, just past 11, my phone buzzed. Natalie, you said you wanted the truth. There's still more. Me. I'm listening. Natalie, then meet me. 30 minutes. Same place. I didn't hesitate. She was already waiting at the trailhead when I arrived, leaning against her car like the last time. But this time, she wasn't composed. She was pacing, phone in hand, brow furrowed in a storm of thought. When she saw me, she looked relieved and a little nervous. You okay? I asked. No, she said bluntly. But I'm done hiding it. I gestured toward the bench near the edge of the trees. Come on. Talk. We sat, and Natalie didn't stall. She didn't hesitate. His name is Caleb Dunn, she said. He works with Rachel. Technically under her, though he never treated her that way. I blinked. Wait, you mean he's one of her subordinates? Exactly, she said. But it didn't matter to her. She chased him like a college girl chasing the frat king. He's divorced, early 40s. Had a reputation even before Rachel got involved. Reputation? Natalie laughed bitterly. He fucks his coworkers. It's kind of his brand. He did it at his last firm too, got quietly pushed out after some HR flags. Rachel used to call him a disaster wrapped in a jawline. Ironic, right? I stared out at the woods, trying to breathe past the pressure in my chest. And she still went after him. Oh, she didn't just go after him, Natalie said. She wanted to be the one who tamed him. She used to joke about it. Like he was some wild dog she could leash. I ran a hand down my face. What is it with women and broken men? Natalie gave me a sharp look. I don't know. Maybe the same thing that makes good men stay with women who treat them like second options. That hit a little harder than I expected. She's been seeing him since spring, she continued. But it ramped up in the summer. Hotel stays. Midday quickies in his car. She even bought lingerie specifically for him. I found tags, I muttered. She said they were for me. Yeah, well, she said a lot of things. There was a pause. Natalie looked down at her hands. I saw them together twice. The first time was that lunch I told you about. The second time was worse. I braced myself. How bad? I caught them kissing in the parking garage, she said. I was coming back from a client meeting, and they didn't see me. She was against the concrete wall, legs wrapped around his waist. It was raw, not sweet, not gentle. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. She never let me touch her like that. She let him, Natalie said softly. I'm sorry. I nodded, biting down the wave of nausea clawing at my throat. Does she love him? No, Natalie said instantly. She wants him. That's different. She wants the thrill, the danger. But love? She shook her head. Rachel doesn't love anyone. Not really. She loves attention, power, control. Jesus. She told me once, Natalie said slowly, that being with him made her feel out of control in the best way. Like she was being ruined by him, but loved it. Ruined, I echoed, voice flat. Natalie turned toward me. You don't have to keep letting her do this to you. I know. No, she said. I mean, really no. You don't owe her anything. She's not some broken woman who needs fixing. She made choices. She knew what she was doing. The wind stirred between us. Her hair blew across her face, and I found myself wanting to reach out and tuck it back. But I didn't. She's with him tonight, Natalie said. My head whipped around. What? Caleb, she clarified. They're at a hotel near the marina. She told me it was a planning session. Said she needed space. You know what that means. I laughed, cold, bitter. It means she's in bed with him right now, and I'm sitting on a bench like an idiot. You're not an idiot, Natalie said firmly. You're just the one who cared more. Silence stretched again, and then she said the one thing I wasn't expecting. I can't stay quiet anymore, she whispered. And I'm not going to let her keep doing this to you. To either of us. Our eyes met. You mean it, I said. She nodded. Every word. There was something burning in her gaze now. Something that had nothing to do with vengeance and everything to do with truth. I always thought you were the kind of man who deserved more, she said. And I hated watching her take that for granted. I didn't move, didn't speak, but the air between us cracked with tension. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was awake. Awake to the betrayal. Awake to the truth. Awake to the woman beside me, who saw me, really saw me, and never once looked away. And Rachel? She wasn't the woman I'd lost. She was the lie I'd been living with all along. Natalie showed up at my place 2 days later, unannounced but not unexpected. It was just past 8 p.m. The sun had dipped behind the houses, and the sky burned a smoky orange. I was sitting on the porch, a beer sweating in my hand, when her car pulled into my driveway. No words, no call, just her. She got out slowly, clutching her jacket close like armor. I didn't move. I just watched her come up the steps, that familiar, careful rhythm in her walk. Always composed. But tonight, she looked raw. Hey, I said softly. Hey, she echoed. Can we talk? I stood and opened the door without answering. She followed me in, pausing just inside like she wasn't sure she belonged there. Which made sense, because for the longest time, she'd only ever seen this house through Rachel's lens. As Rachel's confidant, Rachel's shadow. Now she was here for herself. You want something to drink? I offered. She shook her head. I won't stay long. You said that last time. She smiled faintly, dropping her eyes. Yeah, and here I am again. We settled in the living room, the air thick with unsaid things. She looked around, at the books Rachel never read, the art Rachel pretended to like, the couch we used to have sex on when we actually had sex. Her gaze lingered on everything, like she was finally seeing it all without the filter of friendship or loyalty. Rachel called me today, she said finally. I took a long sip of my beer. Let me guess. She suspects something's off. She knows I've been distant, Natalie said. She kept saying she needed me, that she didn't know who else to trust. I scoffed. The irony. She doesn't realize I've already chosen, she said. And it's not her. I sat up a little straighter. Why are you here, Natalie? She looked me dead in the eye. To tell you the truth, the part one never admitted, not even to myself. I set the bottle down slowly. Go on. I didn't stay silent just because she asked me to, she said. I told myself that for a long time, but it's not the full truth. She looked down at her lap, fingers twisting in her coat sleeve. I kept quiet, because part of me didn't want to lose you, even as a friend, even from a distance. I was scared that if I told you what she was doing, you'd hate me too. And if I couldn't have you, I couldn't bear being hated by you. Her words hit like an unexpected blow. Not violent, just heartbreakingly human. I watched you love her, Mark. I watched you give her everything. I saw the way you looked at her, like she was the only woman in the world. And I used to wonder, just once, what it would feel like to have someone look at me that way. I didn't respond. Couldn't. My chest tightened with a mix of grief and guilt, and something else. Something warmer. Something dangerous. I never acted on it, she continued. Not even in my head, at first. I buried it so deep it almost felt like it wasn't real. But every time she made fun of you, every time she rolled her eyes when you texted her something sweet, I hated her a little more. She always made me feel like I was too much, I said quietly. Too sentimental. Too affectionate. Too safe. Natalie nodded. She didn't want safe. But I did. I looked at her, really looked. Her posture was tense. Her hands clutched together like they were the only thing keeping her grounded. But her eyes, they burned. And in them, I saw everything I hadn't been allowed to see in years. Admiration. Desire. Hope. I think I was waiting for this moment, she said, her voice low. Not because I wanted her to hurt you, but because I wanted a chance to tell you what she never could. What's that? That you didn't fail, she said. She did. And anyone who can't see your worth doesn't deserve you. The quiet stretched between us, hot and humming with tension. Natalie, I said slowly, you've been part of every truth I've had to swallow this week. But this is the first thing that actually feels good. Her smile was small, but it reached her eyes. I'm not trying to replace her, she said. And I'm not expecting anything from you. I just couldn't keep it in anymore. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. What if I told you? You already have something from me. She blinked. What do you mean? I met her gaze. Honesty. Trust. Hell, even peace. I haven't felt that in a long time. But with you, these last few days, I haven't felt like I was drowning. She swallowed hard. We sat in silence for a long time after that. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that feels full, loaded with possibility. And then she stood. I should go, she said. I stood too, but this time, I reached out and gently caught her wrist. Her skin was warm. Her breath hitched. She looked up at me, eyes wide. I'm not asking for anything tonight, I said. But I don't want this to be the last time. Her voice was barely a whisper. It doesn't have to be. She left without another word. But she didn't close the door all the way behind her. She didn't have to. Because something had already opened. Natalie texted me 3 words that changed everything. Let's expose her. I was at work, mindlessly scrolling through contracts I could barely focus on, when her message lit up my phone. My stomach tightened. The moment had been coming, but seeing it laid out, seeing her ready to cross that final line, hit like cold water. I replied. How? A dinner party. She and Caleb will be there. You and I will be, too. Are you sure? Yes. I want her to see what she threw away. And I want her to know you're not alone. It wasn't just about revenge. Not for me. And I could tell it wasn't for Natalie either. This wasn't about theatrics or rubbing anything in her face. It was about reclaiming something we both lost. Our dignity. Our power. Our truth. Rachel had spent months hiding behind fake smiles and curated stories. I wasn't hiding anymore. The dinner was a casual event, a birthday party for a mutual friend, someone from the office Rachel and Caleb both worked at. It was being held at a trendy downtown restaurant with soft lighting and a private back room. I wasn't exactly invited, but Natalie had made sure I'd be welcome. I RSVP'd for both of us, she said with a grin, the day of. I told them I'm bringing someone special. I gave her a look. Is that what I am? She shrugged, the corner of her mouth twitching up. Depends. Do you want to be? There was a flicker of tension in the air, heat that hadn't broken through yet. Every time we got close to that line, we hovered. Maybe we were scared to cross it. Or maybe we just knew that once we did, there was no going back. That night, when I picked her up, she opened the door and nearly knocked the breath out of me. A deep emerald dress clung to her like second skin, dipping at the chest just enough to demand attention without begging for it. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek twist, exposing her neck, elegant, effortless. She wore confidence like a weapon, and I couldn't look away. You clean up okay, she teased as I stared. You're stunning, I said without thinking. She looked away, a small smile pulling at her lips. Thanks. I kind of wanted to make an impression. You don't have to try, I said. Trust me, you'll be the only one I see in the room. When we arrived at the restaurant, the energy changed. I could feel it the moment we stepped into the private room. Heads turned. A few people smiled at Natalie. A few more looked at me with confusion. And then I saw Rachel. She was seated near the far end of the table, next to a man I recognized instantly from photos and half-heard conversations. Caleb. Tall, smug, with perfectly tousled hair and the kind of designer stubble that screamed midlife crisis. His hand was on Rachel's thigh, too casual for business, too practiced for newness. Rachel saw me before Caleb did. Her expression froze. Her hand slid off his knee as if burned. She blinked twice, quickly, like she thought I might be a hallucination. Then she saw Natalie beside me, and her mouth opened. Natalie leaned in and kissed my cheek. Not dramatic, not sexual, but intimate enough to make Rachel's eyes flare wide. We took our seats, conveniently placed directly across from them. For the first 20 minutes, the table buzzed with surface conversation. Polite small talk, office gossip, laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes. I noticed how Rachel avoided eye contact with me, how her laughter was louder than usual, how she kept touching her necklace, an old nervous tic I hadn't seen in years. Caleb, meanwhile, didn't seem to know who I was. Or if he did, he was too arrogant to show it. But Natalie? She owned the moment. She complimented the host, laughed at every appropriate moment, and leaned into me like we were something real. And the thing was, we were real. Maybe not in the traditional sense, not yet, but in a way that mattered more. We weren't pretending. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself to the restroom. When I returned, Rachel was standing near the hallway, waiting. "Mark," she said quickly, her voice low and urgent. "Rachel," I said flatly. What is going on?" she asked, eyes darting toward the table. "Why are you here with her?" "She invited me," I said. "Wanted me to see the truth up close." Her eyes flashed. "You're dating her now?" I raised an eyebrow. "You care?" Her mouth opened, closed. She crossed her arms. "I just don't think it's appropriate for you to flaunt this here, especially in front of Caleb." I laughed once, sharp and cold. "You've been sleeping with that man for how long? And now you want to talk about appropriate?" "Lower your voice," she hissed. "Or what?" I said. "You'll lie to me again?" Rachel's jaw clenched. "This isn't you, Mark. You don't play games." "I'm not," I said. "I'm just done losing." I stepped around her and walked back to my seat. Natalie looked at me with a soft, questioning gaze. I gave a small nod. I was fine. More than fine. I was finally standing. And across the table, Rachel sat down stiffly, pretending nothing had happened, while her entire world quietly unraveled behind her eyes. There's a strange sort of power in knowing someone doesn't expect you to show up, especially when you walk in not as the broken man they discarded, but as someone whole, or at least pretending to be. Rachel had always been good at performance, but what she hadn't counted on was mine. When I returned to the table, Natalie shifted just slightly, brushing her thigh against mine. A simple, casual movement. But Rachel noticed. Her eyes flinched toward us, locked on that one point of contact like it was a car crash happening in slow motion. She tried to smile. It didn't work. The room was full, 12 or so people from their firm, a few spouses, some friends of the birthday guy. But I only really saw 3 faces. Natalie's, calm, radiant, quietly triumphant. Caleb's, smug and oblivious, buttering a piece of bread like nothing in the world could touch him. And Rachel's, tight-lipped, wide-eyed, pretending she wasn't bleeding inside. She leaned toward Caleb and whispered something. He chuckled, looking around until his eyes landed on me. There was no recognition in his face. Just another guy at the table. He nodded like I was someone Natalie had picked up at the gym or maybe from work. He had no clue who I was. Perfect. "I forgot how much I hate these things," Natalie whispered beside me, sipping from her wine glass. "Loud rooms. Polite lies. Forced laughter." I muttered. "Yeah, it's basically a networking orgy." She smirked. "You always did have a way with words." And then it happened. Rachel's eyes met mine. Not a glance. Not a flicker. A long, held stare. Unblinking. Unfiltered. She didn't even try to smile this time. Didn't try to fake it. There was hurt there. Real, raw hurt. Maybe even regret. But there was also something else. Fear. Fear of the version of me sitting here. The one she didn't recognize anymore. I didn't look away. I let her sit in it. Let her feel what I'd felt for months every time I reached out for someone who wasn't really there. Then Natalie leaned in and brushed something off my lapel. Deliberate, slow, her fingers lingering just a second too long. Rachel blinked. Caleb looked over at us then. His brow furrowed just a little. He leaned toward Rachel, asked something. She said nothing, just stared ahead, lips tight. For the rest of the night, I played my role. I laughed when I was supposed to. I made casual conversation with the guy on my left about the Broncos' shit offense and the price of parking in downtown. I refilled Natalie's glass. I brushed her hand when I reached for the bread, and every time I did, Rachel's shoulders stiffened. At one point, Caleb reached over and rested a hand on Rachel's knee. She flinched. He noticed. "Everything okay?" I heard him say under his breath. She nodded too quickly. Natalie turned toward me and whispered, "He knows something's off." "Good. What do you want to happen tonight?" she asked. I thought about it. Did I want Rachel to squirm? Sure. Did I want Caleb to feel like the cocky facade was slipping? Absolutely. But more than that, I wanted her to see me. The version of me she buried under years of dismissiveness and quiet betrayal. I wanted her to realize she hadn't broken me. I want her to see she doesn't get to define who I am, I said. Natalie gave a small nod. Then mission accomplished. After dessert, the group started thinning. A few people hugged goodbye. Some slipped out for smoke breaks or moved to the bar. Rachel stood abruptly. "I need to use the restroom." Caleb didn't move with her. As she passed behind our chairs, Natalie glanced at me. "She's hoping you'll follow her." I didn't. I leaned back, sipped my whiskey, and said, "Let her hope." Caleb turned to us a moment later. "You're new. I don't think we've met." Natalie responded before I could. "This is Mark. A friend. A good one." He stuck out a hand. "Caleb." I shook it, steady, firm, controlled. "Mark," I said. "Nice to finally meet the man from all the stories." He raised a brow. "Stories? Oh, just the office gossip," Natalie said smoothly. "You've made quite the impression." Caleb laughed, but there was a flicker of discomfort in it. "Well, you know how people talk." I smiled, calm as ever. "Sure do." Rachel returned moments later, her expression composed but pale. She didn't sit back down. She stood behind Caleb, her hand on the back of his chair. "I think we're heading out," she said to the table, though her eyes flicked to me. "You two take care," Natalie said sweetly. Such a cute couple. Rachel's jaw twitched. Caleb stood, nodded, and offered a half-smile. "Nice meeting you both." Rachel didn't speak again. She just walked away. And when she looked over her shoulder one last time, sharp, wounded, confused, I knew she felt it. The balance had shifted. She wasn't in control anymore. And I wasn't hers to hurt. Not now. Not ever again. She showed up at my door the next evening. I'd barely gotten out of the shower. My shirt was clinging damply to my back. My hair still wet when I opened the door, and there she was. Rachel. Makeup smudged just slightly beneath her eyes. A designer jacket thrown over what I could only assume was the same dress she wore the night before. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Hi," she said, breathless, her voice thin and unsure. I said nothing. Her fingers trembled at her sides. "Can we talk?" I stared at her for a long second before stepping back. She took that as a yes. Inside, she moved like someone stepping into a memory. Her eyes flicked over the furniture, the kitchen counter, the photos still hanging on the wall. The ones I hadn't had the energy or the heart to take down yet. "So," I said, crossing my arms, "which part are you here to lie about?" Her head snapped toward me, mouth opening like she might protest. But then she closed it, took a slow breath, and sat down on the edge of the couch. "I'm not here to lie," she said softly. "I'm here to explain." I chuckled. That's what cheaters always say. "Let me explain." As if an explanation makes the betrayal less real. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said. I stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "Stop insulting my intelligence. You didn't mean for this to happen? You planned hotel rooms. You made alibis. You used your best friend to cover for you. Don't pretend this was an accident." She looked up, her eyes glassy now. "I was lonely." I stared at her. "Lonely?" "Yes," she said. "You stopped seeing me. You buried yourself in work. You came home exhausted. I tried to talk to you, and you just shut down." I felt the anger building, slow and volcanic. "You know what's funny, Rachel? I was exhausted. I was breaking my back trying to build something for us. A future. A life. I worked myself numb, thinking I was doing it with you, not for you. And while I was doing that, you were out there fucking someone who made you feel unpredictable." She winced at that. I stepped closer, pulled my phone from my pocket, and opened the photo app. "Do you remember this message?" I turned the screen to her. She stared down at the screenshot. Her words to Caleb, the late-night confession that still lived behind my eyelids when I closed them. He's such a safe little puppy. I could walk in naked and he'd still ask how my day was before touching me. Rachel swallowed hard. And this one? I tapped again. I fake it just to get it over with. He still thinks I like sex with him. Tears welled in her eyes. Please, Mark, I wasn't trying to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice breaking despite me. Every time you looked me in the eye and told me you loved me. Every time you let me touch you knowing you had someone else inside you the night before. A silence fell between us, heavier than anything words could carry. Then she shifted. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. So what now? She asked bitterly. You're with her now? I didn't flinch. I didn't say that. But she was all over you at that dinner. You let her put on a show. I crossed my arms again. You don't get to police who I spend time with. So you were sleeping with her. I took a slow breath. No, but if I did, I wouldn't owe you an apology. Her expression twisted. So this is revenge, then? No, I said. This is clarity. She stood, wrapping her arms around herself like she was suddenly cold. I never thought you'd stop loving me. I didn't, I said. Not until you killed what I loved. Her bottom lip trembled. I don't know how to fix this. You don't, I said. You don't get to fix it. You made 1,000 choices that led to this. You don't get to clean it up with a single conversation. She looked around again. Is this really it? I nodded. I've given you every chance. And you used each one to stab deeper. I was scared, she whispered. So was I said. But I didn't betray you. That's the difference. She stared at me a long time. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. Flat. Defeated. I guess I never deserved you. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't argue. She left a minute later. No dramatic slam of the door. No screaming. Just quiet steps and the sound of her car pulling away. I stood there for a long while, the house echoing with silence. Then I sat down. And I exhaled. The confrontation was over. But the aftermath? That was just beginning. Natalie showed up that night like she knew Rachel had already been there. She didn't knock. Just walked up to the porch with a quiet kind of certainty and waited until I opened the door. She held a 6-pack of beer in one hand and a takeout bag in the other. Did it happen? She asked, eyes scanning mine. I nodded once. Yeah. She let out a long breath, then held up the bag. Thought you could use some dumplings and something cold. I stepped aside, and she walked in like she belonged there. Because, if I'm being honest, she did. We ate on the couch with the food spread between us, dipping crispy pot stickers into sweet sauce, barely speaking for the first 15 minutes. There wasn't a need. The quiet between us wasn't tense anymore. It was easy. When I finally looked over at her, she was curled sideways, legs tucked under her, nursing a beer and staring into the fire I hadn't realized I'd lit out of habit. Feels weird, I said. What does? This? I gestured vaguely at the space between us, feeling like things aren't crashing anymore. Natalie smiled, soft and sad. Sometimes the silence after the explosion is the loudest part. I don't know what to do next, I admitted. You don't have to know yet. But I feel like I should. She turned to face me, pulling one leg up so she could rest her cheek on her knee. You don't owe anyone a performance, Mark. Not Rachel. Not me. You get to just feel things. You've earned that. I took another sip. The firelight flickered over her skin, catching the curve of her cheekbone, the line of her collarbone where her t-shirt hung just a little loose. It was subtle, but I felt it again, that pull. Not just physical, though that was definitely there. It was something deeper, like a current running under everything we said. You stayed tonight, I said after a long pause. I did. Why? She blinked. Because I wanted to. Not because you felt obligated. Mark, she said, setting her beer down. I'm not here to fix you. I'm not trying to make anything happen that isn't ready. But I'm not going to pretend anymore, either. Pretend what? That I haven't wanted to be close to you for a long time. The air shifted. She wasn't confessing like a girl with a crush. She was stating a truth that had been simmering under years of boundaries and half-kept secrets. And I knew that line between us, the one we danced around for days, was thinning. I don't know if I'm ready, I said honestly. For whatever this might be. She nodded. I don't want something rushed. I want something real. So if that means waiting, I'll wait. But I'm not going to lie to you about how I feel. Then tell me, I said. All of it. Natalie sat forward slowly. I stayed silent because I was scared. I told you that already. But what I didn't say was this. I didn't just stay quiet for Rachel's sake. I stayed quiet because I didn't think I was good enough to step into the space she abandoned. You are. Her eyes met mine. You don't even know who I am without her. Then let me find out. The room felt heavier now, not in a bad way. In the way a moment feels when it's about to become something else entirely. I don't want our connection to be built on pain, she said. Or on revenge. Neither do I. She reached across the small space between us and touched my hand. Just that. No kiss. No sudden rush of bodies. Just skin against skin, steady, warm, honest. When I touch you, she said, I don't want to be a distraction. I want to be a choice. You already are, I said. Her breath caught, just for a second. But then she smiled. That night, she didn't go home. But nothing happened. We didn't undress each other. We didn't fall into bed in some desperate attempt to erase the past. Instead, she curled up beside me on the couch, under a blanket, her head against my shoulder, her fingers gently tangled in mine. We talked. About childhood. About who we were before Rachel. About what we thought we deserved, and what we were finally beginning to realize we could ask for. When I woke hours later, she was still there. Still holding my hand. Still on my side. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I didn't feel like a fool. I felt understood. I felt safe. It arrived 2 days later, folded neatly in an envelope with my name on the front, no return address, no unnecessary flourish. Just Mark, written in her looping script that used to fill birthday cards, grocery lists, sticky notes on the fridge that read things like "Don't forget milk" or "Missed you last night," left pasta in the fridge. Now, that same handwriting felt foreign. I stared at it for 10 minutes before opening it. Natalie was gone. She left early that morning with a gentle kiss on my cheek and a promise to call later. She didn't push. She never did. That was the difference. Rachel always needed attention. Natalie just offered presence. I sat at the kitchen table, mug of coffee growing cold beside me, and finally opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of stationery, cream-colored, delicate, with a faint perfume I hadn't smelled in years. Not since she used to wear it just for me. Mark. I don't know if you'll read this. I don't know if you should. But I needed to write it anyway. Maybe for you. Maybe for me. I'm sorry. Not in the vague, automatic way people say it. I mean it. I'm sorry for lying to you. For cheating. For making you feel small when all you ever did was love me too much. I didn't know how to tell you I was drowning. That I didn't feel seen. That I didn't feel wanted. And I know that's not your fault, but it's the truth I sat with for a long time. Caleb wasn't about love. He was about escape. From my own boredom. From the image of myself I didn't want to face. I felt ugly and resentful and invisible. He made me feel something. That doesn't justify anything. But it's what happened. You didn't deserve what I did. You never raised your voice. You never gave up. You were faithful when I wasn't. Steady when I was selfish. And maybe I resented that steadiness. Maybe I hated how good you were because it reminded me how far I'd fallen. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a reply. But I need you to know, I never stopped loving you. And if I lost you for good, then I deserve that. Rachel. I read it twice. Then a third time. And still, nothing. Not a single tear. Not a single pang of old longing. Just clarity. She said she loved me. But it wasn't a love I could survive in. It was a love built on silence and suppression. On shame and avoidance. On needs unmet and truths untold until they turned bitter and sharp. The Rachel I loved existed only in my memory. The woman who wrote this letter? She wasn't reaching out for healing. She was writing to clear her conscience. Not to rebuild, but to relieve herself of guilt. And that's when I realized. This wasn't for me. It was for her. She wanted to say she tried. Wanted the narrative of, I wrote him. I said I was sorry. I did the right thing in the end. But it was too late. Because a few nights ago, when I held Natalie's hand in the dark and we talked about what scared us more than anything, trust, I felt something Rachel never gave me. Peace. Natalie never tried to dazzle me. She didn't have some glittering performance ready to distract me from my pain. She just showed up. She stayed. I looked down at the letter one last time, reading the last line again. And if I lost you for good, then I deserve that. I stood, walked over to the fireplace, and lit a match. The flames caught quickly, curling around the paper like it had been waiting to burn. I watched it blacken and curl into ash. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt free. Later that night, Natalie came back. She kicked off her shoes by the door like she'd done it 100 times, and I met her at the kitchen island with 2 mugs of tea. She took one and looked at me. You okay? I got a letter today, I said. Her brow lifted. From her. I nodded. What did it say? I sipped my tea. Everything I thought I wanted to hear. And I didn't need it anymore. Natalie smiled gently. Good. We didn't need to dissect it. She didn't ask for every detail. She didn't push. Instead, we sat on the couch, legs tangled, and talked about absolutely nothing. About stupid movies. About music we loved as kids. About her dream of someday moving to the coast, opening a little bookstore cafe with too many plants and not enough customers. I'd come, I said. Every day. You'd get bored. Not with you. Her cheeks turned just a little pink. You mean that? I reached over, brushing my thumb along her knuckles. I don't say anything I don't mean anymore. She leaned into me then, head on my shoulder. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to choose me. I felt chosen. 3 weeks later, I sat across from Natalie in a quiet cafe on the east side of town. It wasn't fancy, just a little corner spot tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat. Faded wooden tables. Edison bulbs. The kind of place where nobody was in a rush. She sipped from her cappuccino, foam touching the corner of her lip. I reached over without thinking and wiped it away with my thumb. She smiled, soft, grateful, present. And it hit me. This was what it was supposed to feel like. Not the big dramatic movie version of love. Not the firework highs followed by gut punch lows. Just this. Comfort. Safety. Truth. Natalie wasn't filling a void Rachel left behind. She was showing me that the void had always been there, and Rachel just kept covering it with noise. Now that the noise was gone, I could hear something else. Peace. I've been thinking, I said. She raised an eyebrow, pretending to brace herself. Oh, I want to do this right, I said. Not fast. Not as a reaction. But as a real thing. Natalie set her cup down, watching me closely. Okay. I don't want to jump into anything because it feels better than what I had. I want to build something new. From scratch. On clean ground. Her smile faltered for a half-second. Are you saying you need time? I shook my head. No. I'm saying I need us to be intentional. She blinked, surprised. Say that again. I want to take you out, I said. Like really take you out. A proper date. No secrets. No drama hanging over us. No comparisons. Her expression warmed, her fingers sliding across the table to lace with mine. I'd like that, she said. We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the world pass by through the window. There were kids chasing each other down the sidewalk. A man struggling to parallel park. Someone walked past holding a balloon tied to their wrist, smiling for no apparent reason. Life went on. I read something the other day, Natalie said, tracing her fingertip along the edge of her cup. It said that trust isn't about believing someone won't hurt you. It's about knowing that if they do, they'll be honest about it. I nodded. That makes sense. You know I'll never lie to you, she added. Even if it's hard. I believe that. And I know you won't lie to me either. I won't, I said. Not ever again. She gave me a look, gentle, amused. Again. I laughed. Okay, fine. Maybe I used to lie about liking your tofu lasagna. She smacked my arm, mock offended. That was your favorite. It was my punishment for being polite. We laughed together. Not forced. Not brittle. Just honest. Later, we walked down the street toward the bookstore next door. She tucked her arm through mine, resting her head on my shoulder as we strolled. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Inside the shop, she beelined for the poetry section. I wandered toward travel books, pretending not to watch her out of the corner of my eye. She moved with that familiar calm, grounded, curious, radiant in a quiet way Rachel never understood. And when she turned and caught me watching, she didn't look away. She smiled. We met in the aisle between used cookbooks and old atlases. She handed me a dog-eared collection of Rumi poems. Page 47, she said. Read that one. I opened to it. The line at the top read. The wound is the place where the light enters you. I exhaled. Fitting, I said. She stepped closer. You're not broken anymore, Mark. Maybe I never really was, I said. Maybe I was just buried. She reached up, brushing her thumb along my jaw. I soughed. You're not buried now. We left the store hand in hand. No expectations. No ghosts. Just the start of something real. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom alone. I looked at myself, really looked. The lines that had deepened in my face. The tired eyes. The quiet strength I didn't know had been building. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was performing for someone. I didn't feel like I had to win anyone's approval. I was just me. Scarred, sure. But healing. Whole. I picked up my phone and opened a blank note. No title. No plan. Just this. The worst pain I've ever felt came from the person who swore they loved me the most. And the greatest peace I've ever known came from someone who never said it, but showed it every single day. That's the difference. And I'm done chasing anything less. I closed the note. Then I called Natalie. Hey, she answered. Hey, I said. How do you feel about tomorrow night? Depends. Are you asking me out, Mark? I am. Well then, she said. I feel pretty damn good about it. I smiled into the quiet. Finally. The story wasn't ending. It was just beginning.